or swarms.
Okay.
So it is difficult. I mean, back in October, our own government publicly committed to fast-tracking anti-drone defences to the main air bases encasement in Baldonnel, and in particular for the upcoming EU presidency. So, I mean, officials at that stage did acknowledge that recent drone incursions in Europe were on the increase and would be sensible. I mean, in general terms, from a practical point of view, it's probably a combination of kind of three things, really. It's personnel, infrastructure and equipment. You have to sort of set up anti-drone units really, really quickly. You have to develop kind of special operations rooms, which be kind of monitoring activity in general terms, which is the kind of thing NATO would have. You have to put in no-fly zones, and then you just have to be in a position to react. And then obviously there's a lot of kind of a legal framework over it, and the command control is very difficult as well, you know.
Okay, and of course we're facing into having heads of state here during the EU presidency, and the vulnerabilities that'll bring with us. But for now, many thanks for that. I want to bring in Eoghan Corry now. Eoghan, very briefly, what are the rules around flying drones as it stands?
There's a no-fly zone around the airport that was extended, obviously, for President Zelensky's visit, and the airport was effectively closed and ready for that particular aircraft to arrive. Air Corps had a presence in the area. Very interesting that an awful lot of this doesn't add up at all. The evidence, the information we're getting was from the William Butler Yeats naval vessel. We don't know what the Air Corps saw, but certainly nothing was picked up by the drone system, the anti-drone system recently installed by Dublin Airport. And you have to remind listeners, that's the only anti-drone system we have in the country. We're very, very far behind just in tracking the ordinary problem of drones, even around prisons and situations where drones shouldn't be flying. We're very, very bad at tracking them.
But we're told that Micheál Martin has been briefed on this. So, I mean, at some levels, this is certainly being taken seriously.
And there's another big problem. And while the system was brought in by Dublin Airport, and there are still drone incursions and there are still nuisance incursions around Dublin Airport, they haven't actually closed the airport as they did very publicly about 2 years ago. But the legislation hasn't caught up. The legislation, there have been prosecutions. There hasn't. The most recent high-profile prosecution didn't result in a conviction. It was quite clear from the court case that the legislation in place is completely unsuited to modern drone incursions and the problems that might arise. And I do think it's, if there's any good to come out of this, and I'm not exactly sure that we were dealing with a hostile act with drones at all from the evidence that we've seen. But if there's one good thing to come out of this, Katie, is that at some stage the legislators are going to have to sit down and say, we need proper legislation before we start putting in drone systems, and then we can start thinking about the European head of the presidency of the EU and the Ryder Cups, all of those things that will come up, which will make us vulnerable to some sort of malevolent drone flying.
Indeed. OK, we'll leave it there. Eoghan Corry, editor of Travel Extra.